Walter Green was 72 years old, but anyone who met him would describe him as sharp, composed, and unfailingly polite. A retired high school teacher, a Korean War veteran, and a grandfather of 5, Walter had lived a life full of stories and sacrifices. After his wife passed away 7 years ago, he had kept mostly to himself in a quiet suburb of Colorado Springs. Life had slowed down, but it hadn't stopped. That's why the invitation to attend his granddaughter Emily's graduation in San Francisco meant so much to him. Emily had been his late wife's favorite, and she was about to become the first in the family to graduate with honors from Stanford. Walter had booked the ticket weeks in advance, packed his blazer the night before, and even had a fresh haircut for the occasion. He was nervous, not because of the flight, but because he hadn't seen his family all together in 3 years. The airline was Global Sky Airlines, the second largest carrier in the country, with a $4 billion valuation. Walter had flown with them before, never had an issue, but this time something was different. As he approached the gate at Terminal 3, cane in one hand and boarding pass in the other, he was pulled aside by a stern-faced security officer wearing a Global Sky uniform. "Sir, step aside for secondary screening," the man said, without even making eye contact. Walter blinked. "Excuse me, I already went through TSA. I was cleared." "You've been randomly selected for additional security procedures," the officer repeated mechanically. "I have a pacemaker. I can't go through certain scans," Walter explained, calmly pointing to the medical alert badge on his chest. The officer didn't even glance at it. "Step aside now, sir." Embarrassed and confused, Walter shuffled to the corner as the other passengers stared. A young couple looked away, uncomfortable. A child whispered to his mother, "Why is that old man being taken away?" He was led into a small, windowless security room off to the side. The fluorescent lights buzzed above. It was cold, and Walter had trouble standing without his cane. But when he tried to explain that, a second officer snatched the cane from his hands. "We have to inspect this. It could conceal a weapon," the officer said, turning the polished wooden cane over and shaking it. "That cane belonged to my father," Walter said quietly. "It's not a weapon. I've flown with it for 20 years. "No back talk," another officer snapped. "They made him remove his shoes. Custom orthopedic ones he struggled to bend over for. They made him take off his belt and even demanded he loosen the back brace, supporting his lower spine." Walter felt his dignity being stripped away, piece by piece, right along with his clothes. There was no privacy curtain, no sensitivity to his age, just cold, mechanical procedures carried out like he was a suspect in custody, not a grandfather trying to make a family event. 25 agonizing minutes later, they handed back his cane without apology. "You're free to go," the officer mumbled, turning his back. But it wasn't over. As Walter hurried back to the gate, sweating and out of breath, he found a gate agent typing quickly at the computer. "I was pulled aside for screening," Walter said, showing his ID. "I need to board now." The agent looked at him flatly. "Your seat's been reassigned. The system shows a refusal to comply with airline safety checks. You were flagged." "What?" Walter's heart dropped. "I complied with everything. I didn't do anything wrong." "I'm sorry, sir," she said, clearly not sorry. "We can book you for a flight tomorrow, but you'll need to speak with customer relations." He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just stood there, stunned. The flight took off without him. He missed his granddaughter's speech. He missed the family dinner. And when he got back home that night, all he had was a voicemail from Emily. "We missed you, Grandpa. I saved a seat for you." Walter sat in his kitchen in the dark. His untouched suitcase was still on the floor. Then he walked to his old desk, opened his laptop, and started typing. He wrote everything, every insult, every detail, every humiliation. And when he was done, he posted it publicly on Facebook. He titled it simply, "I'm 72 years old, and Global Sky Airlines treated me like a criminal." He didn't expect anything to come of it. He wasn't trying to get free tickets or sympathy. He just wanted the truth to be known. He wanted someone to acknowledge that what happened wasn't okay. But the internet thought otherwise. Within hours, the post had over 100,000 shares. Veterans groups reposted it. Disability advocates commented. Grandparents across the country left messages of support. "You didn't deserve this. My dad is 80. I would lose it if someone treated him like this. I'm canceling my Global Sky tickets today." The story snowballed. It made the local news, then the national news, then the morning shows. Walter was interviewed live on television, and though his voice was soft, his message was loud. "I didn't want to fight, but if they can do this to me, they can do it to anyone." That's when he got the email. It was from Hannah Lim, a young civil rights attorney in San Francisco who had just left a major firm to start her own practice. She had read Walter's post, and she wasn't just angry. She was ready to act. Her own grandfather, a 79-year-old veteran, had been mistreated on the same airline a year prior, but they never filed a complaint, thinking it wouldn't go anywhere. This time she promised it would be different. "I want to help you, Mr. Green," the email read. "Not just for you, but for every person who's been silenced, humiliated, and ignored. Let's take them to court." Walter hesitated. He wasn't a fighter anymore. He had fought enough in his life. But something deep in his gut told him this was different. This wasn't about revenge. This was about respect, dignity. The first step was easy. Hannah Lim, the determined civil rights attorney, filed the lawsuit against Global Sky Airlines on Walter's behalf. They alleged discrimination, humiliation, and unlawful treatment. The media picked up the story quickly, and soon Walter Green became the face of a national movement for better treatment of elderly and disabled passengers. But what started as a small claim in a local court turned into something much bigger. Global Sky initially dismissed the case, confident that they could squash it quickly. They were a massive airline with billions in assets and powerful legal teams at their disposal. But the more they dismissed Walter, the more public outrage grew. The media continued to push, and soon more people came forward with similar stories. The situation escalated when an undercover reporter for a national network revealed a systematic practice of mistreatment by Global Sky Airlines. The report uncovered how the airline routinely targeted elderly and disabled passengers for extra screening, even when they had no reason to do so. Worse, internal whistleblowers leaked documents showing that Global Sky had policies in place that ignored complaints from passengers, especially seniors, who were treated as low priority. Walter had no idea that his single act of defiance would begin to unravel a corporate empire of indifference, but it did. In the courtroom, things were heating up. Walter sat in the front row, looking like a man who had never been in a fight like this. His back was straight, his cane was by his side, and though he didn't say much, the expression on his face told the whole story. He was determined. On the opposite side, the Global Sky legal team looked polished, smug, and sure of their victory. Their lead attorney, Gregory Hayes, had a reputation for winning difficult cases. He was known for cutting down opponents with precision. But when he stood to address the court, he underestimated the power of a quiet, determined senior citizen. Hayes immediately tried to discredit Walter, making him out to be a man seeking compensation for an exaggerated incident. He insinuated that Walter had created the entire situation by being uncooperative, which was entirely untrue. The defense's strategy was clear: blame the victim, diminish the impact of the incident, and drag out the trial. But Hannah had already prepared for this. She brought forth an avalanche of evidence, from medical records to witness testimony, showing that Walter's physical condition made the unnecessary treatment and humiliation he endured all the more damaging. They also presented witness statements from other passengers who had been at Gate 47 that day and described how Walter had done nothing wrong. But it was one piece of evidence that would turn the tide of the case. A hidden internal memo from Global Sky's upper management that ordered the targeting of senior passengers under the guise of security concerns. The memo was dated just weeks before Walter's incident and revealed a disturbing pattern of elderly passengers being flagged for additional screening, despite there being no actual security threat. This, combined with testimonies from whistleblowers within the company, proved that Walter's experience wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a company-wide policy to make certain passengers feel like criminals. The defense tried to suppress the memo, claiming it was privileged information, but Hannah pressed on, revealing the depth of the company's disregard for its customers. And as the days of the trial wore on, Global Sky's arrogance started to show cracks. Then, in the middle of cross-examination, Gregory Hayes made a fatal mistake. He tried to poke holes in the credibility of Walter's medical condition, something that had already been verified by Walter's doctors. He implied that Walter had exaggerated his ailments to gain sympathy. That's when Walter stood up, slowly but firmly. His cane tapped against the floor as he walked to the witness stand, his voice steady but unwavering. "I don't need your sympathy," he said, his voice cutting through the courtroom. "I've lived a full life, Mr. Hayes. I've faced war, I've lost a wife, and I've watched my children grow. What I need from you, from Global Sky, is respect, the same respect I give to every person I meet, no matter their age or condition." There was a pause in the room. You could hear a pin drop. Even the judge seemed moved by Walter's words. Hannah gave Walter a reassuring smile. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about something far bigger. Walter wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for every person who had been dismissed, humiliated, and ignored. Days passed, and the public outrage continued to mount. As the case neared its conclusion, Global Sky's stock price began to drop. Investors were nervous. The airline had become a target for public ridicule, and the mounting legal expenses were starting to take their toll. Finally, after weeks of intense legal battles, the jury deliberated for less than 24 hours. The verdict was in. Global Sky Airlines was found guilty of discriminatory practices, negligence, and fraudulent misrepresentation. They were ordered to pay $2 billion in damages, with a significant portion of that going to Walter Green and the other passengers who had been mistreated. But the real shock came when the judge added another stipulation. Global Sky would be forced to change its policies with strict oversight and public reporting, or risk facing further legal action. The ruling sent shockwaves through the corporate world. Global Sky's CEO, Richard Faulkner, held a press conference later that day, his face pale and his hands shaking. The airline's image was irreparably damaged. "We are deeply sorry for the harm we have caused," he said, looking defeated. "We will take immediate action to overhaul our procedures and policies." But it was too late. The damage to